You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObsessive.com. Okay, welcome back to the TV Obsessive podcast for episode 19. And as always, I'm Cameron Crane, the executive editor of TVObsessive.com. I'm joined here by Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor of the site. How you doing today, Ryan?
I'm doing really well. It is a really good fall day today. No complaints. I did have a question for you though, based on what you have watched this week for the first time. Have you, like many of us, sworn off ever eating mushrooms ever again?
Well, I mean, not really, but you know what? Actually, I don't like mushrooms in the first
I don't
place.
either.
So it was like that didn't affect me at all because I just never liked mushrooms in the first place. There's something about the texture. I
Yeah.
don't know. Some people give me a hard time about this, but
My dad would
I don't know.
smother a steak in mushrooms. I just have never been able to find an affinity for
It's
that
funny
can't
because
do
I do feel like there's a way in which people who try to pressure me into eating mushrooms, which happens, um, understand at some level because I've said before, basically, if you like dice them up so small I can't
it.
notice they're there, no
Yeah.
problem with it,
Yeah.
right? And that's not what they want, right? It's
Yeah.
like that's the thing. People who like mushrooms, you want exactly the thing I don't like.
Yeah,
I think that's what
exactly.
it comes down to. So it's just
Exactly.
not really a taste thing. It's a texture thing.
Yeah, we're gonna get into fungi and all sorts of things when we talk about an episode of The Last of Us later on in this episode. The next in our sort of favorite episodes run that we're going through. But first, we'll do our normal things where we talk through just some brief news items. We'll talk through some things that we're watching or wrapping up in a spoiler-free way, and then we'll get into our episode of the day. But let's start with some news. I think today is October 24th, recording this on Tuesday. Anything exciting happening in the world of television these days?
Not a lot is catching my eye, like in the news. I mean, again, there are various things. I think I understand to some degree why they do traffic in what I want to call gossip, like the stuff we've said we've avoided, because otherwise they
Yeah.
just wouldn't have enough. You know what I
There's
mean?
nothing.
It's like we don't need to talk about some of the stuff that they're talking about in the like Entertainment Weekly.
Yeah.
No real updates on the strike. My understanding is they are resuming negotiations. That's a positive sign. But who knows? They just kind of hope with the writer's strike. I did feel like at a certain point, it just all of a sudden the MPTP was willing to
Yeah.
significantly give ground,
And they had to make a commitment to say we're going to sit down for as many days as it takes to finish this.
right. But with the actors, SAG-AFTRA, it was like they were meeting days in a row, and then they broke it off. The MPTP broke it off, right? So I don't know. Hopefully something gets settled soon. Look at the upcoming TV schedule. I know it's thinner than normal, but there's still
Yeah.
kind of enough stuff over the coming months that we're not going to feel like there's no new TV. But they need to get back to work on some of the stuff that stopped
Yeah.
production.
It's funny. You look at some of the stories about, just some sites are posting things about, negotiations are going to resume soon in hopes of saving the 2024 TV season or in hopes of saving the 2024 box office. There's sort of this qualifier now of they sort of realize how far out this is going to impact things if they don't get back to work.
Yeah. And again, I don't know, at least speaking for myself, as per usual, I put the onus on the NPTV and the blame, as it were, for all the, because it's just like with the writers, it seemed like months go by and then they finally go, oh, well, these people are serious. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it feels like the same thing. I'd hoped it would go faster with SAG-AFTRA after they had, negotiated with the WGA.
Yeah.
And I don't have any inside information on what the precise sticking points are. But when you read that the NPTP is saying, well, that's a non-starter, like they don't even make a counter offer on the topic in a meaningful way. Well,
Yeah.
when people decide to go on strike for a reason, So I don't know.
Yeah, I think I was somewhat wrong. I thought I was in the camp of once writers reach an agreement, it would really accelerate or propel a pretty quick agreement for SAG. But that's certainly doesn't look like it's going to be the case as of today.
Yeah, I thought so too, or hoped that that would be the case. And maybe that's what it comes down to, you know. Um, Again, I don't know to what degree it's a hang up on some of the quote unquote AI stuff. I could see that, you know, and
Yeah.
there are, and maybe that comes to mind for you because there are issues related to that that are sort of more particular to the actors than
Hmm.
the writers. Is a different kind of thing where you're talking about possibly scanning background actors, um and like maybe they really want to do that. You know? Did you see there was a video going around of some Disney movie where they had they like AI generated background actors in the stands at a sports event or something?
Oh gosh. Oh boy.
I don't know what movie it was. At one point, I looked up what movie it was, and I don't remember. I didn't make a note of it. It was like a movie I'd never heard of. Anyway, it looked awful. It looked like bad video game graphics. They're just kind of like, don't notice this, you know. And so I don't know.
So
Hopefully they get
someday
over
the
themselves.
NFL is going to start pumping fans into Jaguars games or something for TV. This is where it's headed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyhow,
Yeah,
other news briefly. We don't have a whole ton here. Did you ever watch The Problem with Jon Stewart? I think that's what it was called.
I have never caught that before. I used to watch his obviously his Daily Show all the time, but I've not really caught any of his stuff since he left.
Yeah, same. I mean, I feel like I've seen a clip or two,
Hmm.
and it felt like, yeah, Jon Stewart's still doing the Jon
Yeah.
Stewart thing. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but we're about the same age. I felt like when he was having the Daily Show, particularly through the aughts,
Yeah.
that he was a really kind of important voice during the George W. Bush administration.
Yep.
And then, okay, still hanging around during Obama and like, fine. But
Yeah.
there was already a way in which I felt like when it got to Trump, he didn't have it, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
he didn't
He
have,
had 8 years of sort of, I don't want to say lackadaisical content, but not Bush era content to deal with.
I just always think about, do you remember when he held what he called the rally to restore sanity?
Yes.
And I feel like that embodies how Jon Stewart has always had this, guys, can we just calm down and like stop being so irrational? And somehow for me, that stopped landing in the past however many years in the
Yeah.
way it used to. So
Yeah.
anyhow, we're rambling around on this. Apple TV canceled the show.
Yes, they did.
Read about this?
Yes.
What I think is interesting is it's in the articles you read about it that basically, I think China's the big thing. But basically, they pulled the plug on the show because of the topics they were planning on covering in the upcoming season. AI was one of them that's been mentioned,
Hmm.
right? And the other one is China. I don't know what about China,
Yeah.
but it very much seems like this is Apple saying, well, I mean, I think I even read that Apple said you need, gave content notes or whatever, and he wasn't willing to give ground on it. And they said, okay, well, we're canceling your show then.
Yeah, this is an interesting point. Obviously, I guess maybe Apple and Amazon are the only ones affected by this, but when these consumer product companies or e-commerce companies have to think about their markets, as in the largest market in the world in China, and what will be impacted by the fact that if we do something to potentially criticize them, we're going to have to pull back on that. And yeah, somebody like Jon Stewart's going to say, no, thanks. I don't need you to, give me notes on what I'm going to be saying. I'll go do it somewhere else.
Yeah, right. So I mean, you get it from Apple's perspective. I don't
Yeah.
know, but I think I want to say it's bad, but also that I get it. Like as you're
Yeah.
pointing, it's kind of like with some of the stuff about the NBA sometimes, where you're kind of like, well, okay, I understand, like the
Yeah.
business aspect of it, but
It's not shocking, certainly.
yeah, but it's interesting. Yeah, as you say, Apple in particular, maybe also Amazon, but Apple, is what's relevant here. Having
Yeah,
those business interests related to China, they don't want to piss off China, and probably
exactly.
Jon Stewart was going to piss off China, right? And then
Undoubtedly, yes.
yeah. And then AI was mentioned as well, and I don't know, to what extent, again, what we were just talking about with the actors and all of that, and how much that's at play, and
Yeah,
in the strike, and maybe Apple is wanting to. I don't know. I think China's the big thing there.
yeah, it's got to be. I mean, they cannot minimize that market at all. So
Right. I mean, didn't China get upset about a map in the Barbie movie or something?
yeah.
Yeah.
I also, tying it back, you mentioned the NBA a minute ago. Being from Houston, there was this whole thing about 10 years ago where the Houston Rockets had Yao Ming, this player from China that was their best ever. The Rockets general manager said something in support of Hong Kong and some freedom things, and the NBA cracked down on him because obviously they're trying to expand over there. So yeah, it's not surprising, and yeah, a little walk the line, but I mean, 1.2 billion people. What are you going to do? You have to keep them happy.
I mean, I guess it's just. I mean, it's so messy. The whole Taiwan situation, and then some stuff Hong Kong, but Taiwan thing maybe in particular. Anyhow,
yeah, we'll do another geopolitical podcast some other time.
Yeah, we don't have to get into it. One China. Anyway, what else? We got a release date. I believe this was yesterday, which I guess is like Fallout Day. This is the video game Fallout, which we were talking about. Neither of us have played, but they're making a TV show of that, which has been on my radar for a while, and they've given us a release date, not until April.
Yeah,
April 12th. But I guess the thing's done then.
Yeah, I would think so. If you've got a release date and you're locking that in on a schedule, certainly it's done. You don't need to reshoot. And they're going to hope, I guess, that they have a chance to get these performers in the show, which, as you pointed out, and maybe you'll mention in a second, that's quite the cast that this has. But I'm sure they're hoping to be able to have them to promote the thing before April. But yeah, this is on the tails of, again, something we're going to talk about today: a extremely successful video game. They're hoping translates into the small screen.
Yeah, and again, I don't know. I mean, I'm curious. I haven't played the game. You said you haven't played the game.
Never.
It's a popular game. I guess there's good story stuff going on here. I don't know. I'm definitely on board because of the cast. You got Walton Goggins, A+, Cal McLaughlin, a good Agent Cooper. We were talking about Twin Peaks last week, and I didn't get this in. You were saying, keeping track of the characters and struggling with that a bit.
Yeah.
One thing I could have said is for me, everyone who is in Twin Peaks is their character in Twin Peaks. Like I'll see I'll see Ray Wise. I'd something like, it's Leland. every single character. James Marshall is James Early. Dana Ashbrook is Bobby. It's just like across the board. Anyhow, so yeah, Colin McLaughlin's in this, and also Ella Purnell, who was in Yellow Jackets.
Yes,
that's the big thing that I know her from, Jackie in Yellow Jackets. I think there's some other names in there that may be recognizable, but for me, like, you had me at Goggins, and then you double down with Colin McLaughlin.
That's really all you need. I mean, we're Goggins will hook you in. I mean, no matter what show it is. So yeah, I mean, I don't think you need necessarily the knowledge, much like with Last of Us, of the game to go into this. Just a good leading man, again, similar to what Last of Us has, and yeah, I'll certainly check it out.
Right. Yeah, me too. So I'm looking forward to that one. Not till April.
Yeah.
But still, the early part of 24 still does look a little bit thin. Maybe some more things will be announced. Maybe
all our hopes are going to be on True Detective for about 2 months.
True Detective.
Yeah.
No, that'll be good. Looking forward to that. See, I was looking at this Hollywood Reporter piece about TV revivals, and I don't know.
This made me laugh out loud. This thing is how unfamiliar I was with these. Yeah.
But yeah, for the same reason as me, like, I did not remember that they rebooted Mad About You.
Nope.
I vaguely recall they did Dallas. What else is on here? Night Court, of course, that's going on. Fuller House.
I did not know Dallas. I did not know Mad About You. I did not remember Murphy Brown.
Yeah, that was the other one I really didn't remember.
And no concept of that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that was kind of both of those. Mad About You. Well, I mean, actually, it says the reboot of Mad About You, the revival, was on for 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I don't know if you ever watched that show back in the day.
No.
It was one of those things where like I kind of did because I was a teenager and it was on the only TV in the house.
Yeah.
You
I
Murphy
remember
Brown.
seeing, I think there were a couple on here. The Fuller House and The Conners got a lot of publicity. Those were very popular, the revivals of those shows.
Yeah, and Will and Grace. I remember them bringing back Will and Grace.
Yeah.
I think maybe someone wrote an article on that for the site even. Murphy Brown was one of the big ones where, yeah, I just don't recall that they did that, and I'm actually kind of curious about it. But as the article says, the new Murphy Brown was DOA. So yeah, just
It also
really,
implies that maybe they did this for the sole purpose of mocking Donald Trump. Like that was the whole reason that they brought it back so you could do that.
yeah, I guess, I mean, it ties into, though, what I was saying about Jon Stewart, not to get too political here, but comedy in the age of Trump, I feel like, is very difficult. And there have been any
Yeah.
number of comedians who've tried to just, I don't know, make a certain kind of joke, like pointing and laughing, like, how ridiculous is this? And it's like, well, that's just reality.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, doing something that effectively moves the needle in terms of comedy or satire. Um, I don't know. I think maybe some have done it, but yeah, we don't need Murphy Brown to just be on TV like,
Yeah.
I don't know, making political jokes. I guess that's
It only lasted 1 year. It's over.
total flash in the pan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of what we're watching, I don't have much. Invasion season 2 is ending. The finale comes out tomorrow. I've been on that week to week writing on it for the site. Still cannot decide whether it's any good.
Yeah, I've been loosely not trying to absorb all of the spoilers, but I've been following along with your piece. It seems like you can't decide whether to be up or down on this show. It seems like there's been a lot of ups and downs this season.
Have you watched the show?
I've not watched it yet. No.
It's like, it's just kind of fine. I don't know. Like sometimes like, oh, I'm pretty entertained, and then some of the dialogue in some of these episodes is really kind of groan worthy, and it's like
Okay.
cheesy dialogue, and overall I don't feel like it's really doing anything terribly novel or interesting. It's just kind of there,
Yeah.
I mean, structurally it is kind of interesting because it's an alien invasion story, but it doesn't directly focus on the government as the protagonist. It has
Okay.
kind of ordinary people as the protagonists for the most
Yeah.
part, and that's sort of interesting. But I don't know. Yeah, I just keep watching it.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
and
I don't, again, I have not seen it, so I don't know if this is a fair analogy, but it's sort of like you can't make Saving Private Ryan all on the beach, the whole beach scene, right? You have to have the beach, and then there's the story after that, right? I don't know if there's a story after the actual invasion has happened, or where they're taking that.
the whole time, this is 20 episodes now of the invasion is happening.
Oh boy, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, it is kind of, again, it is kind of interesting because I really liked it at the beginning,
Yeah.
because you're kind of dealing with these ordinary people and their perspective. And at first, they don't even know what's happening, right? And so on. And there's been some good stuff in there. It's been a little uneven, I guess. Um, but I keep watching it, and I know
Yeah.
that they won, I think, 2 more seasons,
Oh boy.
and I'll probably watch them. That's to see where they go with this.
Yeah,
I
they've
have
got
this
you.
I have
You're
this
hooked.
feeling that somehow the ultimate conclusion is going to land on like some kind of kumbaya moment, but that will be fine for this show. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I don't know, maybe it won't, but
you want a rival. That's what you want. You want a rival.
here's something that gets at Invasion. There's a running thing about David Bowie.
Okay.
All right. They use the most on the nose Bowie song you could imagine, which is Space Oddity.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Like you could choose any Bowie song that you wanted. And they're like, no, it's going to be Space Oddity that we play over and over again. And it's just kind of like that's fine, but there's nothing about the show that feels challenging or edgy.
Yeah.
Anyhow, how's Loki going?
Yeah, Loki is halfway through this second season. Kind of an uneven third episode, although the third episode was a point people have been waiting for because it reintroduced Jonathan Majors and his now third version of the character of Kang into the Marvel universe. And I guess coincidentally, I think tomorrow he is scheduled to appear in court over these domestic violence charges. And so there was some comments that we've not changed anything about the show related to Majors or our plans for him. Obviously, he played this big role in the Ant-Man movie back in February. But I think after these next 3 episodes and after the court hearings in the next couple of weeks, there's going to be some decisions made about that. He was fantastic, as you might imagine, in the episode, despite some of the, again, up and down nature of what I thought about it. But yeah, there's sort of a real point coming of what they decide to do with him. But
Yeah,
he was, in stories have come out. I always often wonder if these are planned things where the producer of this episode came out and said, "Oh my gosh, he was such a joy on set. We loved working with him. He was the best." If they're trying to sort of skid the wheels of we want to keep going with him. Again, who knows what the judges are going to say in the next couple of days, but he's back, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that kind of stuff always sticks in my craw a little bit personally.
Yeah,
because either he did the very bad things or he didn't. And if he did the very bad things, I don't like care that he's nice to people on set.
Exactly.
It's not relevant really. So
exactly.
I don't know. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah. So again, I'll be writing about the last 3 episodes coming up, finishing I think in mid-November. But yeah, hopefully it ends well. First season was an excellent ending, so we'll see where they go.
Cool. Yeah. And did you watch any more Twin Peaks?
I've not caught any more Twin Peaks, not yet,
right.
But it's on the list.
We had busy weeks. We've got like nothing for you. Like, what do you want? I watched The Last of Us, which
it's coming. Yeah,
I did. We're going to talk about episode 3 of The Last of Us. Long time. I had not watched the show prior to this, so I did watch the first 3 episodes. And the first one is an hour and a half long, and this third one is like 80 minutes long.
I should have prepped you for that. I forgot.
So I managed to get that in between since last week, and yeah, that's about it. I haven't gotten back to watching Moonlighting either. So
Oh yeah, too much. Well, you watched 9 hours of Last of Us over 3 episodes, so.
It's not 9 hours, 4 hours, maybe 4 hours,
probably 4. Yeah.
So I guess we can get to that. Yeah. So as per usual, we'll take 10 seconds or so and plug in a little music. And spoiler warning here on the other side, potentially all of The Last of Us season 1 is going to be on the table. But we will be focusing on episode 3. Long time.
All right, welcome back. We are going to dive deep into episode 3 of season 1 of The Last of Us, entitled Long Time. Again, spoilers are ahead, certainly for the first 3 episodes, but potentially for the entire first season. In this episode, immediately following the sacrifice that Tess made back in close to Boston, Massachusetts, Joel and Ellie begin their hike to try to go meet up with Bill and with Frank. Ellie sees for the first time some of the evidence of the government's sort of involvement and execution of people in the early days of the cordyceps pandemic, and perhaps what they did to people even who were healthy. And we flash back to 2007, where Frank, played by Neil Offerman, Frank, played by Murray Bartlett, leaves Baltimore and stumbles on Bill's compound, who's a survivalist, played by Nick Offerman. Bill takes him in. The two men begin a long-term romance, sharing a love of music and food. Years later, sometime in years later, they are contacted by Tess and by Joel, and they strike up sort of a tenuous friendship, tenuous relationship where they trade things back and forth. Eventually moving to the more current timeline, Frank becomes terminally ill, asks Bill to assist with his suicide after they marry. Bill does not want to live without Frank after about 15 years together, so he kills himself as well at the same time. Joel and Ellie eventually arrive at some point after that and discover a letter that Bill left for Joel, talking about how protecting Frank gave his life meaning and what it meant to be able to do that. He leaves all of his possessions and all of his supplies to Joel and to Tess. And then we see Joel and Ellie take off after getting a truck, after getting some supplies. Ellie grabs a gun that belonged to Frank and set out back on the road to find Joel's brother Tommy. You might be wondering, Cameron, I think you've only watched the first three, but certainly that's a Chekhov's gun that she took out of the drawer there, and might come back into play later. But you're someone that had not seen these three episodes, this third one in particular, before this week. So initial thoughts or impressions of the story, particularly, this 80-minute episode.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a powerful episode for sure.
Yeah,
it's a good episode. I do believe we probably could have pinned down the dates better in your little synopsis.
They do provide very specific. Yeah, they provide very specific years with those.
Provide very specific years. I want to say off the top of my head that like they meet Joel and Tess in 2013 or something like that. And then it jumps to 2023. It's kind of interesting to me in general, the timeline of this show as a post-apocalyptic show, that they set the show now, basically.
Yep.
But the apocalypse happened 15, 20 years ago, or whatever it is.
That's right.
That's kind of interesting to me. Yeah, I mean, if we're focusing on this episode in particular, the real central thing is in the relationship between Bill and Frank. And I don't know, I mean, I do think it works quite well to have this kind of, I don't know, contemplative little romance in here. Some other things that, I have to say about it. Obviously, we're going to talk about this for, the next half an hour. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm curious that, I know obviously you had seen this before when it was airing. Was this your first time rewatching it since then, or had you watched it again in between?
This is the third time I'd seen it. I watched, I think we had screeners for this, so I watched episodes shortly before they aired, then watched them as they aired with my wife, and then but that was, I guess, back in February, March timeframe. This is my first time to see it. Since then, I had not played the game. Obviously, we should have mentioned this was a unbelievably popular apocalyptic video game that has, I think, 2 versions and a third in production right now. I had not played the game, but before I saw any of the episodes, I watched one of these 10-hour playthroughs of the entire game. Sort of was familiar with the story. And that's kind of one of the first things I want to touch on is there are some huge differences between the Bill and Frank of the game and the Bill and Frank in this episode, partially of which we don't really ever meet Frank. He is someone that Bill references that had a relationship, of some kind of relationship. You don't know what kind of relationship, but discovered him dead one day. But Bill sort of kept out going on his own, becomes sort of a survivalist on the road, and eventually ends up helping Joel and Ellie in the game. So there are some sort of wild deviations from the way that they are portrayed in the game. And then clearly this is sort of this standalone episode that obviously loops in some of Joel and Tess and Ellie, but doesn't quite connect to the rest of the season, either before or after. And I'm sure you picked up on that, having just gone through 3 of them.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, so that's interesting. Maybe I knew this, that they kind of expanded out what was in the game, at least for this.
Yeah. So there was no Bill universe in the game. It was just Bill coming and being a supporting character and a helper to Joel and Ellie. And so there's none of this story. This is all sort of a creative license with what happened between these 2 men over the course of 17 or 18 years.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, beside, of course, the focus is on Bill and Frank and their relationship. But before that, you have a period of time where Bill, who apparently he doesn't like being called a prepper, but he was a prepper.
Yeah, that's right.
I was amused by that. His
Yes.
opening days, like he's hiding out while the government's coming around. And of course, our starting point was Joel and Ellie in the present coming across the pit of skeletons.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess that what we're flashing back to was the government rounding people up, and they killed those people, right?
That's right. So I think when we come across that pit, you see this dirty baby blanket. And then the first thing you see when it flashes back is a baby in that blanket.
Yeah.
And sort of this sense of, oh, these people were healthy. They were being rounded up by the government, presumably, as Joel would say to Ellie later, they thought they were being taken to a quarantine area, but that clearly didn't happen.
Or Joel says maybe some of them were, but if it was full, then they just kill people in the ditch.
If they realized that they didn't have room for them, they would just slaughter innocent people. And to that end, the first 3 episodes in particular, when this show came out, the discourse was around how interesting and powerful the openings to each episode was, right? So the first one, you had this sort of 1960s talk show with these doctors, and he's talking about that he's not worried about a pandemic. He's worried about, a fungus evolving and taking over humanity. The second one, if you recall, is the doctor in Indonesia, as they're sort of looking at this first test case. And she says, they said, what should we do about this? And she says, bomb the city. Right. And then this one, where we get this sense of they come across just basically a death pit, that they would just hit you in the mouth with these, I don't know, cold opens to the episode. And that sort of became sort of a really interesting thing. I'm not so sure that the subsequent episodes had that kind of power to it, but there was some just real discourse around the openings of these episodes when they first came out.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, because I was about to say, with regard to the death pit, there's some subtlety to how the show's presenting things. You know what I mean? We don't see the people being rounded up and killed.
That's right.
I don't know. Is that I'm now thinking, like, would I have preferred that? Like, really, like really heavy with it or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is well done. I guess in general, part of what I want to talk about is how I didn't watch this show when it aired, and it's kind of interesting to me because it's one of those things where I kind of meant to. You ever have this experience? Like, the show will be on, and it kind of feels like everyone's watching it. That's kind of how it felt when The Last of Us was on.
Yeah.
And I just never got around to it.
Yeah.
And I find myself thinking about it now. I did watch these 3 episodes, and it's good. And this episode in particular, again, it's powerful episode and all of that. But there's something about it I realized, like, I'm not super into this. And I think it has to do with the overarching kind of framework, the kind of, okay, it's a post-apocalyptic story, there are zombies, the government is awful and tyrannical, and I feel like I've heard this story before.
Yeah. I hear it, and I mean, frankly, I do understand that sort of analysis of it. I will say the second half of this season becomes much less about that. And it's a lot less Walking Dead and a lot more what does it mean to have a relationship with someone? What does it mean to try to become a father again after the things that he suffered at the beginning of the first episode? Right.
Yeah.
And there's some people that they meet along the way. There's some things that happen to them. And sort of how to become that person, not just with past trauma, but ongoing trauma that they keep experiencing. So I remember thinking and reading people saying as we got towards the end of and this was sometimes a commentary on Walking Dead as well, is where are the infected? There weren't any in this episode, weren't any in the last episode, right? And that's sort of when it becomes the best version of itself. And towards the end of the season, you get to see more of that.
Yeah. Well, there was at least one in this episode because Bill has a nice little trap set up and it zaps the guy and he goes, like, it never gets old.
Yeah.
I mean,
you also get the one that Ellie sort of plays with and has her way with at the beginning of the episode. It really makes you think about sort of what's she capable of and what does she want. There's some good things coming for her character and what she can do as well.
Yeah, right. That was kind of weird. That scene. So I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know how much of a tangent I want to go on, but part of me feels like there's almost this fantasy with this kind of post-apocalyptic story, you know?
Yeah.
But look, part of why I'm going to go ahead and say that is because I think what's really interesting about this episode is it gives us Bill as a real exemplar of that fantasy.
Yes.
Within the context of the show. So what do I mean? He says in the letter he ultimately leaves for Joel or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
He says when it happened, he was happy.
Exactly.
Right. The world's terrible, you know. And we kind of see that, you know, he's running around, he's going to Home Depot, he's got his whole setup, he raids all the stores. I don't know. I mean, did that one store really have enough wine for this long a period of time? It seems like he's drinking a bottle of wine every night, at least one bottle of wine.
Like it. Yes.
I don't know. That's a lot of wine. That's all I'm saying. But, you know, and then you kind of have this fantasy of this walled off, self-sufficient life, which fits particularly for someone who, like Bill, was already a prepper, you know, and now living outside of the government. And I think in a broader sense, I think maybe we can tend to find these post-apocalyptic stories appealing because at some level people do want it almost. Like, not saying that we want the zombie horde everywhere or something, but people look at the world and go, you know, things are really kind of terrible, you know, and that there can be this appeal to this idea of it ending and then some chance of a new fresh beginning after or something like that.
And I think that idea of fresh beginnings is important and relevant for a couple of ways, not just, well, if the world burns, we have to start over, but both obviously parallels between Joel and between Bill for different reasons, who want nothing to do with other people, want nothing to do with having to be with or protect or have to look after other people. Both of them have to learn to do that again, have to learn how to do it after so much time of not having to be that person. They have different paths that they take, clearly, and they do it for different reasons. But, you know, I think I was sort of struck by how quickly they introduced Bill as someone that would not be someone that would have at all would let someone into their life, and then how quickly it sort of Frank caused him to flip that switch and go to the other side. Right. That was sort of the one sort of micro criticism I'd have about it. Right. We're going to go on like 20 years of Joel just sort of pushing back against the world, whereas Bill, you know, is charmed by a guy and sort of makes that change rather quickly.
Yeah, it was pretty quick. I had that note too. I was saying, like, I don't know, it didn't quite land for me. Their initial, I don't know, seduction or what have you. Like, I don't know what word to use, because I think their romance as a whole I do buy, you know. But then the I think we're talking about the same thing. The turn from I let you out of this hole, now get out of here. No, I'm not going to feed you if word gets around, blah blah blah. To okay, well then he lets him and feeds him, and okay, we're so far so good. But then the move to the like now we're falling in love, and now it is right into that bit, which I guess it all hangs on the Linda Ronstadt song.
Yeah,
that's the scene that's supposed to do that work.
It really is. And I found it interesting that obviously the title of the episode, the song itself, played at this point, played at the end. The song became sort of a fulcrum of sort of this discussion about this episode. And apparently, Murray Bartlett did play that and sing it beautifully. Like he's a magnificent musician, and has to come in and do this awkward version of it. And then Neil Offerman, who's not a musician, sort of learned to do a really acceptable and really powerful version of it. But yeah, that they are putting a lot of weight on that particular scene. But I think we're just meant to understand that there's something about that song. What a coincidence. He pulls out that book, starts playing that song. But there is something about that song that makes that emotional connection for Bill happen. But yeah, there's some really interesting stuff out there if you want to go sort of find it, of how they made that scene happen with, how Murray had to work to be bad at that and how hard Neil Offerman had to work to be good at it.
That's funny. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Look into that. But yeah, I mean, you make a good point, because I guess thinking back on that scene, Frank was looking through what's there, and he does specifically pick out one, the Linda Ronstadt, and two, that song as like, this is you, this is for you, and that's landing, and that then Bill can't stomach how poorly he performs the song, but then they connect through the song. But this is how the scene's supposed to work,
Yes.
and I get it, and I just don't know if it quite made me feel what I needed to feel in order to, because then it rolls so quickly into now they're building a life together for.
They do, and maybe just for time or for moving the storyline, they had to go through that scene so quickly. Like, it would have been good to clearly there's someone or something that made Bill connect with that song. There's something in his past. Is it someone that has Bill been closeted, and he had this love and affection for someone and could never tell him and never was able to express it, and that's not there anymore? Or is this something else? But would have appreciated some type of little bit of exposition of why that means so much, and why it means so much that Frank could kind of connect with him through that song. But
or what, weirdly, putting on my editor cap and imagining myself as an editor of TV itself, which has never been the case really, although it appeals to me. I found myself thinking maybe it would have almost been better if there'd been less. Like, just cut it, like have the song, have them kiss after the song, cut the bit about them going to bed together, cut from them kissing at the piano to 5-10 years later.
Yeah, because the first thing we see, whatever years later, is them in the midst of a really heated argument, right? So, did you need all of that? I think that it sort of expressed a sense of we're building a relationship very quickly, and then so that you'll believe it when we say we're here so many years later. But
I'm just thinking, there's a way in which the scene where they go to bed together is like a title card that says now romance is happening. So like maybe you could have made it, maybe it would have been more powerful if it was even more brief, and then you can just cut because you're going to do a time jump anyway. Anyhow, I don't make TV.
Well, the song itself, I think because I recapped this show when it came out, I think I wrote at the time that this was going to be Linda Ronstadt's Kate Bush moment. Obviously, Kate Bush and Run Up That Hill from Stranger Things had this explosion of popularity. So did this song. It's went up like almost 5,000% in terms of streams on Spotify. so it sort of just became this rediscovery of this love song that's and there's some interesting stories there. I won't go through the whole thing of how the director actually found that song. But yeah, it just sort of became emblematic of not only this episode, but just sort of this idea of having a relationship, never being able to express it. There's some thoughts of, does this also tie back into Tess? In the end of episode 2, Tess says, "I never asked you to feel how I felt." Right. So did Joel feel that way, but never get a chance to express it? And sort of does this tie into that as well? So anyway, just a good song to sort of tie all those bows together.
Yeah, and I'm there for it. Right, and the story is he asks, Greg Mazin asks, like a friend.
Yeah, he had a friend. The director, Craig Mazin, had a friend who runs the Broadway station on Sirius XM. I'm looking for this song that sort of symbolizes what we're doing here. Apparently, like, a few seconds later, the guy texted back with the name of the song. He's like, "Oh, that's absolutely perfect."
That's interesting. I don't know about the 2 seconds bit. I'll buy it. Yeah. But cool, fair enough. He's like, it's like conceptually they had an idea. And so then it's also interesting to tie back, talking about how this is really expanding out on the game or giving us something that's not in the game. And then it's all the way down to the title of the episode, which comes from the song, which wasn't originally part of the script because he had to figure out what the song was going to be.
Exactly.
And then it becomes exemplary. And I think it works. And I'm also, I feel like if it's the youth who are discovering Kate Bush and Linda Ronstadt because of television, all for
that's
it.
Great. That is
I'm
great.
all for it.
Absolutely good. Yeah.
No problem with this whatsoever. I feel like there's some weirdos, and sorry, I shouldn't call them weirdos. Maybe. I mean, I feel like there's some people in the world who get weirdly offended. We're like, "What do you mean? I've been listening to Kate Bush for 20 years." People are discovering the music. It's good music. Just let people enjoy things.
Exactly. Well, one other note on their relationship, which I found interesting. There was a couple people commenting on this after the fact, but so they obviously this event happens. We learn in this episode, September 26, 2003. And we know that this is sort of takes place in remote parts of Massachusetts right now. And why it would have been such a powerful thing and an unexpected thing for them to decide to get married was because same-sex marriage does not become legal in Massachusetts, even though it was the first state. It did not become legal until May 2004. So in this universe, that never happens. And so this is something that they really decided to do to cement their relationship, how they feel about each other before they unbeknownst to one of them, euthanize one another. But just an interesting point sort of in the timeline of everything.
Yeah. I mean, of course, things were in the air. There were, I think, civil unions, maybe in Vermont and Hawaii.
Yes, couple of places. But I don't think until this May 2004 that same-sex marriage became legal in any one state, in Massachusetts. I believe was the first.
No, I think that's right. Yeah. I don't know. In part pulling on my own personal memories, I do recall there was discussion conceptually, even going back to when we were in like high school in the 1990s, the debate. I don't know, man. It's weird how long ago that feels, but it wasn't that long ago.
I know.
It was just once they decided, once the Supreme Court made that decision, what, about 10 years ago? Also not that long ago.
Yeah.
It seemed like it all disappeared. But for, 10, 15 years before that, you had all these debates in the American political life about this. And I don't know.
Good thing to get we got other more important things to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of what's striking to me is just like how quickly it has, at least from my perspective in the circles I tend to run in and all of that, seem to have just settled in as of course that's how it works. That's just part of life,
as it should have always been. Exactly.
Like, who cares? You mentioned so it's the same Beaujolais in their last meal as their first meal.
Yeah, this is just a nice little Easter egg. If you go to that first time where he pulls him out of the hole and serves him a meal, he talks about how, oh, you're a guy who knows how to pair a Beaujolais with some rabbit. And
Yeah.
then he shows them a wine right before they give him the last meal, and it's the exact same wine of that they had 17 years earlier. It's just a cool little sort of nugget there.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think it's the same meal too.
Yeah, I think so.
Which is kind of a nice
Yeah, and so let
thing
me
there, bringing
just
it full circle.
mention while we're talking about Frank. So Frank, played by Murray Bartlett. I mean, it's just tremendous in this episode. He is does a lot of the emotional lifting and has the emotional weight in this episode. He's just a few months removed. I don't remember if you watched the first season of White Lotus or not.
I have, yeah.
Okay, so his character Armand in White Lotus, I mean, they could not be more different. You know, these two characters. So I mean, he just deserves some props for, he's on the HBO signature Sunday night show, twice within the span of a year, and just does has these amazing roles. Both of I mean, obviously this is just one episode, but credit to him. He's done some fantastic work, and Neil Offerman certainly is great in this episode as well. There's good stuff out there about how he had to not learn, but sort of get ready for and prepared for having this same-sex relationship, which he had not had before. And they both do extremely well. I just wanted to point that out.
Right. Of course, Armand in the White Lotus also gay. So they've got that in common. You're right in terms of the characters there.
If you want
other than that, they're wildly different.
Yes, for a lot of exposure in various ways to Murray Bartlett, go watch first season of White Lotus.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoy him. And, I can't recall. I'm curious now to look up like what else he's been in, because I don't recall knowing of him prior to the White Lotus.
Yeah, I didn't either. He's been a lot of, 1 episode, 3 episode TV series. Looking this up, Guiding Light, Damages, The Good Wife.
Like one imagines he's been around. He's not.
His first credit is 1987. He's been around a long time.
That's what I'm saying. He's not like a teenager.
No.
But
but yeah, and he was most recently in that show. I think this was on Amazon. Welcome to Chippendales. I didn't see that, but
okay. Didn't see that either.
So he's kind of all over the place, but he had a real standout year when he did these two things.
Yeah, you love to see it. I mean, I don't know. He does a really good job,
Yeah.
Because they have to, in this episode of The Last of Us, kind of characterize these guys pretty quickly,
Yes.
But that's effective.
It's a long episode, but there's about 15 minutes on either side of it. That's Joel and Ellie. Mm-hmm. And so when you really look at the time frame, they pack a lot of, and I think it's one of the things that appeal to you. They pack a lot of how they build this relationship over a relatively short amount of time. I think the other thing that appealed to me was, having watched the 10-hour playthrough of the game, there's a lot of the first 2 episodes that are very similar, even word for word, what the game does. And then you get this sort of deviation from it. It's like, oh, this is really unexpected, really sort of out of nowhere, and a very interesting world building piece of it that was just would have been totally unfamiliar to people who had played the game before.
Yeah, right. Which, I mean, I always think that that's great with adaptations.
Mm-hmm.
That they're take some liberties, but that's not what I want to say. I want to say use some of these spaces where you can to do things that aren't in the original.
Yeah.
To whatever degree. So certainly, as I recall, when this episode came out, it seemed like it was critically acclaimed from the get-go. I'm sure there are probably some video game fans who were upset about it, and I just ignored them.
There certainly were. Yeah. So, but I would say most people, even fans of the game or players of the game, respected this episode. But yeah, just in terms of critically popular audience, people that had not had exposure to it before, most of them just sort of fell in love with this episode. And this last thing that we see, this letter that Bill writes to Joel, really propels a decision that he makes with Ellie, and then who he becomes the rest of the season, right? That Bill is able to tell him there was one person worth saving, one person worth fighting for, And as you could tell in the first 2 episodes, Joel really has no interest in doing this mission with Ellie. Tess pleads for him to do it at the end of 2, and he sort of has this moment where he starts asking her questions, making sure she'll do exactly what he says, and it leads to what happens in the next 6. And yeah, just really sort of sets the stage for what's about to come.
Yeah, so the arc's going to be in terms of his commitment to Ellie, and then, I mean, we don't have to like spoil the end of the season just to do it, but I do know it happens.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, guess what? They get closer and begin to develop a relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
And in some ways, he would seem to perhaps prioritize her life over that of others.
Maybe billions. Yes.
As I understand. Yeah.
So I mean, it's good to. I mean, if you're going to watch this far, it's good to sort of see this through. And it does have a really, I think, pretty dramatic transformation from who he has become all these years after the death of his daughter to reverting back to someone that can be that person again. Right. I think that's pretty safe to say.
Yeah. Ellie as his new adopted daughter kind of thing. This is the arc that we're on. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay,
so we cannot leave without asking you something that was important after the end of episode 2. Why did Anna Torv not turn her head when the guy was coming in to kiss her with the tendrils? Why accept the tendril kiss?
That's
one of the great mysteries of the show.
I don't get into kink shaming. I mean, whatever floats your boat, Tess.
It was just to keep him distracted so she could light the lighter.
Yeah, I guess. She didn't be struggling with the lighter.
Yes.
So yes, I guess.
Anyway, yeah, that was had quite the range of reactions when that happened. The tendril kiss, as it's come to be known.
But she did it. She blew him up, and
she blew him up. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so this, as you discussed last week, moved into my top 4 and replaced another episode of television, which coincidentally, ironically, whatever you want to call it, we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah, so I have chosen my next episode out with this in mind. All your cards on the table. I feel like ultimately this is like Ryan's Mount Rushmore, and then it's Cameron picks episodes he thinks will be fun to talk about. Like I feel like it's the contrast. You call it my Mount Rushmore if you want it. But yeah, so when Long Time came out, Ryan said in his write-up that it replaced Better Call Saul, season 6, episode 7, Plan and Execution on his Mount Rushmore. So I think it'll be fun then next week to talk about that episode, Better Call Saul, Plan and Execution. Which I'll be honest, I have not rewatched since it came out.
I haven't either. There are only a few episodes of Better Call Saul that I have rewatched, so I must say I'm really looking forward to going back and doing kind of some context with it as well, especially this episode.
I mean, it didn't come out all that long ago.
No,
it was a year or well, maybe a year and a half. But anyway, definitely one that my initial reaction was to be just utterly blown away by it. And I expect that to remain the case as I painfully watch it again. It's like, how much can you enjoy being just punched in the gut? But I quite a lot is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe I'll watch this and it'll jump back on. More.
So that is part of what I'm curious about, right? So doing that one after a long time, how is there recency bias at play? So it's part of what we can assess is in terms of Ryan's final judgment here. But I'm looking forward to that. I love Better Call Saul, so
yes,
hopefully our listeners have seen Better Call Saul. I don't know that you can catch up with 6.5 seasons in a week. I'd encourage you to try.
Yeah, I do.
Not really. That would be we didn't even calculate. Like if you spent every waking hour of every day for 6 or 7 days, could you get through 5.5 seasons of Better Call Saul?
Let's just say yes, it can be done.
Maybe say it's around 60 hours. That's times 5, 300. I'm thinking like 350 hours or something. So like it seems like technically possible.
Okay.
But anyway, hopefully people have seen it. This is the well, we'll talk about this more next week.
Yeah.
But to me, the fact that there's a break after this episode.
Right. This was the mid-season finale, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll hit on that more next week. But okay, thanks everyone for listening. As always, please leave us a rave review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Like, thumbs up, whatever. Tell your friends, your family, and everyone about how the TV Obsessive podcast is great. Anyway, and you can follow us on social media. You can find us on X, on Facebook, Instagram. We're on Mastodon and on Blue Sky. Search for TV Obsessive. You can find us on social media. Check out the site at tvobsessive.com. And we'll be back next week talking about Better Call Saul.
Yep, I'm really looking forward to that one. This has been a fun thing to go through. I can't wait to revisit that show, and we'll see you next time.